Coming into coding is all levels of view, how to balance out your system. And to truly understand that, this all levels of configuration, knowing exactly how you're connected to your own system of travel. That puts lines of graphs and how to really understand and see your central systems of who you are and interactions. There's always ways of looking at this in travel. How to use that is truly understand, see yourself into all of your competent systems that you are through interactions. Now, the more you start to see things, you start to see through coding. And you understand yourself through coding and all formations of its system, but you have to understand yourself through binary too. Because the binary basically puts everything through tone. It measures, it scales, it communicates through systems on location attractions. Coding comes in all ways and forms. Now we're going to go through rhythm lines, high interference, A, B, C's, lines of series, A lines of B, lines of C over D over E over F, factors over screen. Now, getting direct signals, we go through line signals. Now that line just communicates in the system of travel. All right, there's so many ways of doing coding and track location. Okay. So everything is coding. Everything is all lines of communication, the configurations of coding. We just have to understand how to use it through our binaries and track case to a system. All right. There's so many ways of looking at this, right? But it's all levels of our system inside. All right. 0 core lines and 7 lines of equal lines into VAS. Equals lines of question. Setting core centers 2 slash lines into 3 doubles in screen. Initiate run, right? Directing lines, process line communication system all levels. Intro, equal lines of A, equals lines of 007. Process lines into Y line screen. Directing signals, running system and track correlation setting. Fibonacci, equals lines of core centers of 2 panels. Setting communication high interference, blocking screens, directing lines, X lines of 1, X lines of setting. Initiate run, equals lines of core centers, travel position point communications. Equal lines, core lines, X lines of 1, reset lines of position program. Processing lines, data lines, high interference, inline rotation cycles. Triangulation lines and correlation lines of flux over lines, Z lines of 2, lines of 7, equal lines of V, lines of 1 charge. Directing signals into all of sectors in lines, equal lines of core lines, settings, line communication lines on J lines, calculation jump scar, directing lines, H lines of 1, E line rotation, 0 correlations, and calculation modification system execute. Now, understanding running sequence, running patterns, or that lines communication system, the test is all based on basically not in position locations into 15 pages. Okay, not 15 pages, guys. You got to get into your own systems. How are you going to be able to volume yourself if you keep following general? Okay, you're not here to follow general. You're here to understand your own self through your own system, of your own operations, of your own competent systems and computation or compilations. And that puts all communication settings and files and files and files and data, processing, uplinking, downloading, upgrading, downgrading systems. This is all levels of you understanding you. How do we get 15 pages? Well, triangulations is setting. 15 pages in here, right? Set position to all levels, 15 pages in track locations and center operation surface and track location system, all through energetic lines and a 4 or 5 line screen adaptations. 15 pages. Right here. So this is this. Okay, that's the test. Now what's in the center is a triangulation. Process lines and setting. Okay, 45 in set position. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 lines of setting. 7, 8, 9, 10. Whoa! Look at that. There's 10 right there. There's 10 pages right there. Setting track lines, core centers into lines of 10 over 11, over 12, over 13, over 14, and 15. Yeah. 15 pages right there, all through a triangulation and a code configuration system of a primer in set position. Okay, that's the test. All right. Now, what you put in the test is what you put in files. So you start with this interactions. You find your own system, you find your own security, you find your own panels, you find your own fields, you find your operation system. But it's all about understanding how to come into this interactions. 15 pages. All right. And once you come into that, you come into data sheets. Now that puts position of grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres and highways, right? So let's go again, triangulation, right? The files come out through directions. Files are coming out, guys. Files are coming out and set position to its operation. Okay. So panel lines of 1, panel lines of 3 in traction. Okay, all through triangulation, right? Flux over line, console over line, data process line, and communication lines of center. Okay, 4 lines of communication system. Now let's change the direct signals. What do we have in travel? All through calculation. Okay. Modify the ground lines, circulator line rotations, rotors and routers, and line screen adaptation of surface and data processing. All right. So we process over here in line direct signals into modifications, more line signals. So we got position, location, setting, 1, 2, 3, 4, and set over line sequence, over lines of pi, and position of default. Sending track lines and ground line communicates the surface and track location through system of the calculation. Now, how you use your data sheets is all about understanding how to get into your confines in your system location, your computer operation cycles. High generation screens, data processing lines of 1 center, process lines of 2 center, process lines of 3 center, and track location. Okay. Change lines of screen, adaptation lines of surface. Okay. Now, if you come to color, you change the security lines of panels. Red line signals opens off platforms and communicates in system in track locations. Okay, now that opens up higher core lanes. And then we have the blue line that basically protects, okay, can modify, and the outline screen that puts lines and inhibitors over line, indirect signals, and modification. Right? Changing channels and direct signals and calculation lines of satellites and modem. Modem line screen, adaptation lines of service. That's calculation system and green lines of center. Sets communication lines of data processing. Process lines of data and position location high centers and travel. Set position. Okay. All right. And then we change it again. We have a sequence lines of panels and calculation. All right. Now I'm just showing you this is all through coding, but I'm doing it through what? Box frames. Triangulation frames, symbol frames, right? Everything comes from coding, right? You don't need to get in position locations and do 15 pages. The 15 pages is here in traction. Okay, guys? Now, once you get into that, then you come into this, files. You break up the files, you break up the codings. All right, so once we get into that, then you come in line screen adaptations and the processing, puts all communication systems. So you open up the data files. Now when you open up box frames, they come in this sequence and higher lines of channel and set position, overriding sequence and setting. Okay, oh, energy's too strong, got to bring it in. All right, so you got 2 window frames, right? And then we process over here that puts data platforms in track case to assist through calculations, right? 1 direction, operation direction. 1 symbolism lines 0, 4 lines of 0 outlines a course. Okay, direct signals. Modification grounds inside position location of Fibonacci in track location. Right? Directing line signals in track location to its setting. Okay. Open window, sectors over 1, V screens, indirect signals into modification lines to X8000 in travel. Skyline. High direct signals and modification ground centers in position of stealth. And travel point lines of graph and track location. Directing in communication high center interference. Flux over line and satellite. Directing signals into ground centers of surface and track location high centers that compute system lines of travel and mechanism. Process communication settings at ground lines of surface and a 45 line communication anomaly. Sending lines of communication grounds. Site calculation ground center lines of 1, open sequence of panels, platforms of E factors over screen, 2 line signals, and 3 track locations of provision. Setting calculation ground centers and surface and track location system all through travel. Very complicated stuff, but very defined. It's the confine and configuration system. All right. So guys, this is what you get in position of. You start with this in tractions, 15 pages, right? See, you have to start following you. Don't follow me, what I do. You follow how you see yourself through files. You follow yourself how you see yourself through letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. This gets you into more levels how to come into that and set positions. So once you get into this correlations, all right, travel makers time sequence puts all levels of data files. Line sequence lines of panels over line screen, directing lines of data, process lines of one link in setting. 3 set lines of course centers of sectors, vectors, and quads. Directing core lines cross line symbols align direct signal, right? Bring over core line centers in positions to Y screen location. Platitude lines equal lines of course centers of platforms over C, over D, over E, over F. Okay, now you got a data box screen. We take the data processor in line communication to liquid form a system of zero gravity. Sets core centers of channels in operation sequence in line direct signals in console communication to its setting through travel. Very complicated stuff, but it's a lot of fun. All right, so try to get in that lines of screen adaptation. Very high rise direct signals. How do you come into that modification? All right. Symbolism, track lines, and then you come into this supposition. Coding. Now, coding has each box frame as a line signal into platitude. Now, that's where it comes into truth and lines of screen lines adaptations. Process lines of data equals lines into truth equals lines into false. All right, so 3 box screens and direct signal, right? That's process lines of 3. X3000 comes in, right? Platitude's division location picks up the box screen lines of center and platforms and set position to its settings in 4 tractions, right? Sets lines of communication, another X3000, another X3000, another X3000 in travel. Correlation of the lines of platforms 1 in position docking 3 and track location. Setting communication high grounds, high centers of 1 line screen, adapting lines of 3 line rotation surface and tractions. Symbolism lines of course centers into lulls and a V line screen adaptation of surface and traction. All right. Directing lines of symbolism of panels and lines of configuration of face recognition. Formation grounds, data processing line signals into configuration system, all quickly modify. Ground center lines of symbolism lines of track centers of sequence of panels and a foundation lines of 1 over tractions, direct lines of mothership in rotation surface and track location. Okay, so it gets more complicated when you get more levels of understanding this in position of 15 pages. All right, guys? That's what I want to see on the test. So I'm showing you exactly how to come into this position. So when you come into that, you're bringing the data, you're bringing in the files and set positions. Now let's open up more lines of a window into data file, right? So then we come into the lines of communication, right? Then we come into the codings, run, execute, initiate, program, okay, and setting. Okay, start with that, right? Say core lines and REM, core lines execute, set core lines into telepathy, directing signal lines of program. Initiate run, set position location, execute run, set core lines initiate run, set position locations into all calculate modify and triangulation of run and track location. Directing signals, modification lines of R equals lines of M equals lines of triangulation lines of flux. Process communication ground centers of surface and track location. Getting in communication lines of primer circuits over cross location of screen. Direct lines of 1, direct lines of 2 in track locations. Direct lines of 3 in track location lines of 4 track locations. Directing lines of course centers and line direct signals in modification grounds. Okay. Symbolism lines of track interference into flux over lines into process communications. So how many data files are there in instructions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 files. Just 12 files in 1 box frame, in 1 primer circuit, in 1 travel, in 1 mechanism of times continuance. All right, process over 1, process over 6, line screen adaptation of surface. Now, coming into that position location, you come into high core centers and console. Getting that communication ground lines high centers puts all communication system all through. Now in that lines, modify the system in travel communications and direct signals modification, right? All right, so we set the line to sequence over line connection. Okay. Platforms line, zero line, ground line, circuit line, high rotation surface into all communication system to a black hole and track lines and gravity shift lines of screen. Directing lines of modification grounds over cross locations over line signal. Process lines of 1, tablets over templates, and direct signals and time stamping in track location of 1 center, 1 traction. Now we come into line screen adaptation, all processing communication. Very complicated stuff, the coding. Process line direct signals over line screen locations. Earth line, space line, right? Process over communication setting. Now we come coloration into blue. Blue lines is signals. That's open all signal modification. Blue line is screen lines adaptation of 4 line signals and modification grounds. Open line laser track signals and ground communication surface interaction. Very complicated stuff, but a lot of fun. Directing communication lines of red, security lines of panels. Now it has 2 line signals that process communication over cross location of screen line. So it's communication over lines of flux, over line, initiate, run, set calculations. Symbolism, line screen adaptations of coding in sequence. Setting core line centers, core center line communications of code screen centers. Green line symbolism, cross location setting over lines of lapping interaction. Calculate line screen adaptations over flux. Now you get an equal line core centers off communications in direct signals, not in sharp locations. Oh, it disappeared. See? You don't see it? You're not in position of balance. You see it? There it is. All right? Coloration line, let's go into lines into all levels of pink over cross location of screen lines, adaptations of the force. That position is as patterns. There it is in traction locations. Setting lines of symbolism over cross locations, setting to rainbow graph screen locations. Getting communication grounds as surface, right? All through track lines, all levels of 15 pages. Okay, guys? So that's what I want to see. That's what I want to see through primer on the test. Now, in that position, you do the same thing with 10, right? That's how you put everything. That's how you come into code weaving. If this center line's a tree and a direct signal, let's get into coloration lines of pattern. Lines, one symbolism, one locations. There's a tree, right? Circulation, data routes, process communication, right? Now, you do it through a box frame. You see a tree through a box frame, right? It's got its position locations to its branches and settings, okay? Now, what you have to understand is the platforms that it comes into through track locations, because it's all levels of travels in direct signals into modification grounds and communication and settings. Now, processing system, but it's all levels of track location. It's what? Set lines communication system all through its satellite and track location. Okay, that's what a tree is. All right, so I'm trying to get you guys to understand these things, so you understand more lines of communications to your data files and processing communications, right? Getting in to calculate these lines, we come into spot lines. Now, a spot line has a data processor. Process lines into all those into position of point centers. Illuminate graphs, data process lines, interactive system. Coding screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, right? Now, getting lines of triangulation, one molecule. One AC, that process lines and position lines of DX. Process lines of one center interaction. Very complicated stuff. All through coding. But it's from your cells inside. All right, so we got cell modification. Equal lines, core centers into sequence. Sequence lines, core centers of box. And to run in supposition. So this is this. This is this. All right. So I need you guys to get out of this and come into the coding. All right, code configuration. So we got a box screen and 3 lines of flux over line triangulation. Directing signals, 1 platform communications. Flux over 1, set correlation setting and travel. Now I have a direct line panel, inline communication system all through satellite. Bringing in traction, there it is. There's your satellite interaction. See it? Oh, it lost its label. There it is, right? Set sonar, 1, 2, and 3 value in communications. Directing the core centers of 4 line signals and line screen adaptations of 1 position and 1 flux interaction. Cross-line communication, high interference, code configuration system, modificate system formula equation. Process lines of 1, process lines of 3, process lines of 6, in setting, position your earth line and track location. Platforms lines, E-core centers and core line direct signals and ground centers of surface and track location. Symbolism lines attractions, code configuration, formation grounds and crop circles, and line screen adaptation. Communicate the highest interference, inline direct signals, inline position location to its setting through stargates. Travel point lines of highest interference into flux over 1, flux over 3, flux over 6, lines of primer circuits, and 4 lines of communication system, all through travel in point lines of communication. Higher levels of travels and recognition time settings, your Merkaba, tesseract, and tetrahedron. All right. Torical fields, line direct signals, constant course centers, lines of travel, center communicates and sending all through metric course system. Discharge, line screen adaptations of flux. Set course centers, earth line, space line, and center communication. All right. 45 line angle and line rotation, surface interaction. Okay. So I'm trying to get you guys to understand why it's so important to start with this interaction. Okay, or do it this way, interaction. See how it has a different line of communication? Look at it. Look inside line, right? Adding labels, adding tractions, adding bold. Changing tractions over line signals over core line type of communication setting and track communications. Directing symbolism, line screen adaptations of flux over line. Calculate line screen adaptations of levels, bringing in XD1000 in plateau. Process lines XD2000 in plateau. Set position location in mothership and track location high setting. Process lines of 1, process lines of 2, process lines of center. Process line communicates in high centers of 0, in position of 0, in position of 0, in position of 1, and signal in set position. Fast 2 travels and line rotation surface interactions. Directing communication modification ground centers a surface and track location system, all levels of traction. All through coding, guys. All through coding, right? We lost the grounds. It was too quick. Now we got aligning position locations and what? Solar sail. Woo! All right. Platforms over line equals lines, course centers, lines of travels, point lines of high center interference, cross line signals, process lines of indication system, process and communication lines direct signals, and flux over screen over adaptation. Over line position and track location with setting. Okay, over communication setting, over lines of communication lines of setting. Okay, bringing in lines of communication lines of surface interactions. All right, setting communication high center interference in line direct signal location system, all through line direct signals of Asgard and Bravo in communication. So it's amazing what you can do through codings, guys. All right. But you really have to understand how to all modify the systems. Before you come into this through traction, through coding, you have to understand your triangulation systems and all communications. And look at that, it disappeared. It's not there. The 15 pages is gone. It's not there. It's gone, disappeared. So it's amazing when you come into that position location calculation setting all through travel. Directing inlet rotation surface, inlet lines of communication to its surface. That puts all communications back in tractions and all signals. Now it's going through travel line. It's directing in modifications. It's in correlation system of travel here. So, it's amazing where it can travel in its own sequence, in its own calculation of its data and process communications. All right, so the more you come into that, the more you can come into the coding, right? Coding is an application and line screen created through a website. Now, direct lines as panels and the communication lines as surface. Now, getting into that position location is all of a measure and scales communication system. Yeah, it has disappeared. Look at that. This is what it is, 15 pages, right? But you don't see the next page. It doesn't show you because it's traveled out through its own system, which means it's its own coding of its own operation of its own running system. It's no longer here. It's disappeared. It's amazing how it just basically, you've seen it. I'm gone. I'm somewhere else. All right, so now you have to understand the consciousness of everything through code lines of factors. Now, code factor is a factor over E. And set positions on levels. Now, brackets, 1. Okay? So there's all different ways to do encoding, guys. You can do box symbolism triangulation, but you have to have an intro on what you're doing through tractions. Have a beginning, middle, and set position. Okay? Your intro, your center, operation, and position location, your settings. 3 configuration system all through travels. Now come into that, you come into bracket. Okay, bracket 0, 0, 0, 3 zeros in travel. Okay, and then you come into star mechanisms, time screens, site coordinate centers, line connection, 0 gravity. Okay, there's so many different ways to get a position of 1, 1, 1, 1. Sets communication, initiate, 2-point lines graphs, 2 panels lines, 2 slash communication, 3 lines, and 3 W's in screen, and 2 triangulation. Run system. Calculations, configuration system. AI identificate lines, code for locations, human residence, code signal, lines of 007 attraction. Okay? So it's kind of like Totarian, where basically he puts everything in settings. So it's kind of like this in set position. Okay? Comes in this line signals, come into line communication. Right? Setting lines of 1 in position of 3. Process line communicates in high center interference of panels at set position. Oh, we lost the communication, right? Inline signals a down cross location of settings, right? Okay, so remember, change the communication line direct signals into calculation screen line, right? Over lines of communication setting and flux over screen, right? Angle point lines of track centers into center communication system into your pyramid interactions. Now your pyramid has to have a ground line, a symbol of the locations, right? That process lines in 1 signal in position of 2 panels in track location, right? Center core system is center of operation of U in track location. Compass routes the router's line screen adaptation system to its orb at track location. Bring in process communication line ground location setting to position location to its setting. Communicate the ground line service. Communicate the system all lines set position locations, all through cybernetics, Cybertron, direct signals into modification of set lines, into holographic scanning and screen lines adaptation. Probes. That's a probe. Probes detect everything through atmosphere. They do survey line grounds, they set position lines of travels, they set up Merkaba, core lines of attractions and direct signals into all of their temperature readings, barometers. They say survey track location lines. They measure the scales of platforms of communication system. They process everything in track location settings, all through calculations. Probes. All right, guys. All right, but you have to start at position of coding, your own set position. Okay, your configuration system. Your intro, your center, and your operation, and your travel. Your intro, okay, very important. You get your intro first, your position of your center, intro, center, operation, travel. Send it out through code. Set it out through code, all right? Now, when you send it out, this is where we come into processing of data. You're sending your data through your thoughts, your actions, and your emotions, right? So XC1000 here, XC1000 here, XC1000 here, right? They pick it up. Data 1, data 2, and data 3 in track location. Okay, they pick up the files. Now, it all depends what you have in your codings. You got 3 signature lines of panels, or you got 45,000 line signature lines of zeros, or you got 75,000 lines configuration setting and time sequence lines, communication lines of high interference in the AVR system. All right, so it's all picked up and ground lines of surface and all communication system in 1 center and 1 set position to its calculation. Then you set position lines of travels and ground lines of surface. Okay, it's a lot to take in, isn't it, guys? Trying to understand how this is all in lines of communication sitting all through configuration systems. But it's absolutely amazing. The 15 pages is not here. It disappeared. Woo! Very powerful stuff, right? Because I only see that. I don't see the next one, right? So I'm showing you how powerful it is, what it can do on its own. Because I'm out of here. I showed you what I showed you, and that's it. It's done. So you understand how to get in communications. Are you connecting with it, or is it trying to connect with you? Is it setting up its own primer, or are you setting up your own primer? So once you understand, it travels on its own system, all through calculations, through its coding, through its configuration, through its binaries, transistors, resistors, or its light switches. But you have to come into your own system and travel. Okay. Set lines, 75,000 set position locations, 75,000 pages, all through a circle. How do you do that? Well, let's break it down. 3 lines of course centers and 3 tractions. Right? All right, symbolism lines of center in position location to a system, all through track location system and line conditions. 75,000. Right there. Boom. 75,000 line signatures and patterns, all through coding. Right? 75,000 pages all through coding. You know where it comes from? Data processing lines of 1 signal, data process lines of 1, process lines of data process lines of 3, data process line position locations of 4 and set position. Right? Over cross location screen lines, adaptation lines of surface and track locations. Right? So boxing frames in 3 lines of angles, crossing lines, similar locations of cross-line communications. Getting into processing over cross locations and outline screens into data processing line screen adaptation of surface. Setting communications over line signals, process lines of signals, operate the surface, operate the grounds, center communications to setting lines of travel. Set coordinate centers in position location of primates and prime circuits into your set correlates into circuits. Setting ground lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines of travel communications. Getting ground lines of symbolism, line screen lines adaptations to data process lines. Communication lines of highest interference of 45 lines of angles. Pi generation, correlates and highest interference of center operation surface. In line conditions set in star lines and mechanism location setting to travel. Hooah. Okay, 75,000 pages. All through rotation of Fibonacci. All right, so that's what I need to see on the test. All right. So it's much easier to understand that than understand 15 pages, right? That's what you guys have to come into. Equals lines, in line positions, all those brackets. Equals lines, course centers into box or triangulation. Okay. But to run the system is correlating the panels of triangulations of flux over line. Then you change the communication of direct signals into line signal locations, right? Getting ground lines of symbolism, cross line symbolism locations setting into its crop circle, redirected signals into code frequencies. Core centers of channels to its operation surface interactions. Code configuration lines of 1 over cross lines of screen. Over line signals, line setting core centers, lines of communications. Right? Directing lines of 0, process lines of highest interference in your earth, and rotation surface and track location. Communication ground lines of symbolism, cross lines of signals, lines of center. Sets communication highest interference in position location to a system, all through travel. Done by equation. All through coding. Okay, guys? And then you can bring it up through channel and communication setting to all levels, your traffic and your inventory. Right there. This is your Earth. Earth is here, Earth is here, Earth is here, and your Earth is here in 4 settings. Now you have to start with the data processing data files that processes communication setting and process of center communication system all through travel. And line screen adaptations, all levels of flux in location system and track locations. All right. So it's really interesting when you come into the grounds, your powers, and your atmospheres, and your highways. All right, guys? So your Earth routes the routers routes the Earth. Now coming to that position location of centers is to understand how to use it in a 3-line signal. So it's communication system all through travel. Direct lines of 0, A lines of 1, 1 lines of setting, X lines of A, in line condition equals run. Running sequence in 1 panel. Initiate run system. Micro, okay, mic equals lines into also crop. Directing signals, signature lines. Directing signals equals lines course centers of 007. All right, that's coding. All right, so an XT, it depends on the mass. The mass is all through data, so it has data processing lines of 1. Okay, data processing lines of 3 in track location, right? So that's an XT 24,000 picking that up in plateau. Ground center lines of 1, ground center lines of 2, ground center lines of 3, ground center lines of 4, and ground line centers of 6 in travel. Changing all communication ground centers in flux over screen over adaptations. Process lines of signature lines of panels in platforms and communication lines of A. Process communication ground center lines of set position locations over C in track locations. Sending communication lines of mothership picking up the platform and all communication grounds, taking all signals in modification ground centers of center communication. The mothership taking it now, right? So the mothership comes in if it's a higher levels of mass, and that comes into the civility that processes its data processing in position of its archive that changes all communication to its portals. Now the portal line synchronizes core center location of plasmazine line screens, directing lines of core centers and line signals in routes and routers, line signal location system of center communication setting of operation. Center core centers XD1000 and travel, directs in modification ground centers of surface. Okay. Or we got communication lines of stargates and portals and mechanism. Or we got line symbolism location and ground lines of surface interactions, right? So you're constantly changing everything, right? Compilation into all this complexity or anything at ground lines of surface or anything that routes its routers and line screen adaptations of flux. All through measure, all through scale of 75,000 pages in one center of one operation. Okay, that's why you guys have to get in directions up. And then when you come into that, then you come into all levels of coding. Okay, that's coding right there. And once you understand that, then you understand the hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics is just a higher line realm. It's a setting as a realm of communication settings. Processes anything line direct signal locations and not track locations. But you have to understand measure, you have to understand scale, you have to have balance into its modification to its operation surface in calculation. Balance. Flux over 1, flux over 3. 3 line signals. 4, 6 over location. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. 24 files in that triangulation. Now, how you use it is you take it out through platform. You take it out, you take it out, you take it out. And there you go. There's platform. XD1000 comes in, platform docking. Direct lines of 1 in position 2 over 3 over 4 over mechanism. Process lines of data 1, data 2, data 3, and data 4 interactions. Directing in modification grounds into line screen and structure of design and set position. Processing communications over line signals, higher lines of communication lines of structure over holographic over design. Setting communication grounds, service lines of arrows of indication system, all levels of road graph screen adaptation. Process lines of high center interference, line direct signals into portals and stargates, and measure and correlation lines of traction. Look at that, disappeared. Okay, it's amazing how it comes in its own set position with its own operation surface interaction. Hooah, right? Cover lines of 1, process line, circulation, rotation, service, line signals, line direct signals. So I'm constantly doing all different formula, all different equation in one center, in one operation, in a 4-line position, all levels of metric meters and scales in massive equations through your formula, through your equations, through your codings of your old program setting. All through operation system and all through a track location through system through calculations. Okay? Powerful what we're all coming into, eh? It's like amazing how you come into that, right? So I just want to show you what you guys are coming into through attractions. Questions or comments? Let me know. See you in 5.